Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to round 6 of the Alfa Romeo Touring Car Championship UK. We are here at Oulton Park for round 6. This has been our randomly selected track for this evening, and it is a crucial point in the championship, of course. After the end of this evening's proceedings, we will be at the halfway stage in the championship. We're going to go on board at the moment with Alan Matthews. He is on an absolute flyer at the moment, or rather just completed an absolute flyer. 1 minute 41.6 sees him sit on provisional pole at the moment, 3/10 clear of his nearest rival, John Cole. John Cole currently third in the championship, wanted to close that deficit up to Alan Matthews. 157 points to Alan Matthews' name at the moment. He's second. Second to this man, the car behind, I believe. It's James Atkins actually, who's going to go on board with Rosie Holtenipic, and I believe she was involved with a bit of an incident with Willing Liss, both heading off at the chicane of Britons there, so they will be wanting to get back into the pits and try and get the car mended, ready for a next lap attempt. But all going on here in this qualifying session, and so far this evening, plenty to report on as we see John Cole actually having a bit of an issue in his efforts to try and catch up to Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews nailing the first two sectors on that previous lap there. Fantastic livery on John Cole's car. I know I've mentioned it before, but I'm going to mention it again. It just looks so good. I was going to go on board now with Alan Matthews once again. He's losing out so far on this lap, but is leading a bit of a train of cars. James Atkins, who we're going to talk about briefly in this qualifying session, and then Rob Whitney as well. Greg Young has a nice bit of free track actually as he's heading through turns 7, 8 and 9 with no major kind of obstacles, really nothing to stop him in his path at the moment. So it's actually Willing Liss has just posted a bit of a fly on that previous lap at 144.3 was his previous lap. Oh sorry, 142.8 sees him fourth fastest at the moment, and there is some cars just heading past as Willing Liss chooses to abandon that lap. But we are now within the final 15 minutes of this qualifying session. Our things are going to heat up just a little bit more now as the drivers try to get the final laps in. A local track to me actually is Oulton Park in the Cheshire region, not too far away from myself. And of course, as we're on board with John Cole heading into that fantastic Shadow Walls corner, we are reminded of possibly one of the most infamous ARL moments, well at least while I was commentating, and that is the entry, or rather the travelling through turn 4 when there is a bit of a hole in the ground, as it turns out, and the cars go underground there, and I'm not so often speechless, but on this occasion, or on that occasion rather, I was speechless. So hopefully we won't be seeing some more cars doing a bit of excavation. We should be looking to avoid that, as we're going to go on board now with Rob Whitney. He's got some traffic to deal with here as we head through the chicane. It is against James Atkins. They are now side by side. Of course, both of these drivers in the AM running. It is Rosie who leads the AM running at the moment. She has provisional pole for that field. Rob Whitney in P2, and James Atkins, James Atkins, of course, in the pro running for now. That is something we're going to discuss. I have the figures somewhere in my notes. I'll just grab them in just a second. But James is this weekend fighting for his spot in the AM field. He hasn't had the best year, unfortunately. Things are really not going his way. Not the best of luck on a few weekends. It's a shame because he does have some fabulous pace underneath him. But as noted by Guy, organiser, and occasional, well, I say occasional, usually participant. Hopefully you are watching this evening, Guy. James needs to improve his rating by about 0.85 in order to stay in the pros for the second half of this season's running. And Rob only needs about 0.26, so we could see a bit of a swap between the AM and the pro field there, which would be very interesting indeed. It does, of course, reset your points tally. If you did a good enough job in the AM running, you can, well, theoretically, keep the lead of the championship, although that would be very difficult indeed. I don't know if it has been done yet, as we're on board with Rob Whitney as the back end locks up there. A bit of a trait, a bit of a characteristic of the handling of these Giulietta TCRs. The back end can lock up, and when it gets unloaded, and catch you out there, as it has done for Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney choosing to exit and avoid this lap and go back once again with another 10 minutes to go. He's still got a few lap attempts underneath him. He can probably get about 3 or 4 fast laps in. So these are the few final attempts for the drivers this evening. As we see, John Cole is currently on for a personal best as he goes just a little bit wider. No, that wasn't. That was Greg Young, rather. He improves in the first sector, 55.4, as we're on board with now heading down towards the Druids corner. Steep right-hander there. Quite a high speed. You are travelling at a fair rate of knots heading into turn 15 there before we have another dive down towards the Lodge corner. Fantastic corner there, locking up for John Cole. Actually, he heads down towards his start-finish straight once again. Of course, that massive elevation change can upset the car as well, can make battling in the race quite difficult to add to that as well. And he does unfortunately miss out by about 2/10 on his previous lap attempt. We're going on board now with Will Inglis, because from P5 in the running so far, he's just posted a purple first sector at 55.3. That is comfortably better than Alan Matthews' best attempt at the moment. So I'll stay on board with Will as he tries to carve his way up to the upper end of the field. Of course, not the easiest circuit to overtake on some of these British circuits, especially the likes of, I'd say Oulton actually has a few more overtaking opportunities than the rest, but Will Inglis will be wanting to nail this qualifying session to give him the best possible chances, and he certainly nailed this first lap so far. Personal best sector 2 as well. Will it be enough for Will Inglis to improve and take provisional pole on this lap? Unfortunately, it's not. He misses out by just 300th of a second. Will Inglis still P2 at the moment then, but rounding out the front end of the field with 8 minutes to go in this session, it's now Alan Matthews and Will Inglis. John Cole has his work cut out for him if he wants to try and catch back up to his nearest rivals at the moment. He has to watch out for Greg Young as well. Greg Young also improving as time goes on. Likewise, Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton also in the midst here. Very close midfield action so far this evening, and we still have the last few fast lap attempts yet to come. Alan Matthews currently then still on provisional pole at the moment. Let's see how long he can keep that up, or if he can keep that up, as we go on board with Will Inglis once again. He's heading through that fantastic shallow corner, that banked hairpin, which can catch a few drivers out. It is a fantastic overtaking opportunity and sets you up nicely for Britain 7, 8 and 9 as well. But it is a very narrow part of the circuit, and it is very easy to find yourself on the grass and race ruined, so we'll have to watch out for that. Losing out by only 200th of a second this lap, still very much in with a shout of improvement if he can nail the second and very short third sector as well. Donington, another circuit actually that has a fantastically short third sector. No, I'm wrong. Snetterton, another circuit that has a fantastically short third sector. I am getting my British circuits confused once again. Maybe I am just in Formula Alpha mode, of course, and there's good reason for that. The next round is at Singapore. That will be a fantastic venue for those RSS Supremes. I know I shouldn't really be advertising it this early on in the touring car running, but why not get yourself ready to enjoy some action at Singapore, because it will be fantastic. Actually, I just want to give mention to Rob Whitney. Rob Whitney currently on for a decent lap here. He has improved on his previous attempt, and the reason, well, some of the reason I suspect that he has improved is he's changed strategy. He's opted for the super soft tyre in this session. Now, that doesn't lock him in to using the super soft in race 1, but I suspect he may be feeling like if he looks after them well enough, the super soft will provide enough of a grip advantage to get him a faster lap and push him towards that AM pole. Someone else who's looking to push towards pole is John Cole. I'm a poet and I didn't know it, but we're on board with him at the moment as he goes purple through sector 1 at 55.2, trying to catch up to the likes of Will Inglis and Alan Matthews. Let's watch him now as he heads down towards the Druid corner, trying to avoid a lockup this time round. But yes, Rob Whitney maybe believing that super soft is the better option for him. He does have to watch out for, though. I think a lot of drivers try the super soft in qualifying but abandon it because I don't even think it can get through the lap without overheating and starting to lose speed. John Cole losing out through the second sector this time round. Will it be enough to make an improvement at least? Can he start chipping away at that time towards the likes of Will Inglis and Alan Matthews? Yes, he can. It's now a 141.8. He's got a couple more fast lap attempts underneath him. He has, in fact, just cut the corner, though. I can tell you that. So he will be abandoning this lap or getting himself back into a happier window to get ready for another push, because he has cut this corner, and that means he will not be able to carry on with this lap time. And I believe he has recognised that and has backed off just a little bit, try and bring those tyres into a more comfortable window. James Atkins had a very good previous lap, actually, at 145.1, his best lap of the session so far. He'll be wanting to try and improve to get towards the likes of Rob Whitney, but I can tell you, in terms of AM running, it is still Rosie Hodson, who's been sat on provisional pole for a little while now and is looking quite comfortable. It must be said, she's doing a fantastic job in that Anfield so far this season. And I'd just like to give mention to, if any of your viewers are, like myself, local to Liverpool, as Rosie is going a little bit wrong there, shall we say. Where was that? That was heading down towards Turn 1, in fact, that was the very start of another fast lap, and unfortunately for her, she's going to have to dive back into the pits to complete another outlap, and that will pretty much give her one last fast lap attempt. If she's really quick out of the pits here, she can get another one under her belt, but otherwise this will be it for her qualifying. That went wrong so early on there. Is it not what you want? I suppose if it is going to go wrong anyway, you want it to be right at the start of a lap, so it'll give you plenty of time towards the end of the session. She'll just about have enough time to get a couple of laps in if she leaves now. But yes, it's quite difficult saying the Anfield, because I don't mean Anfield, which is a local football ground, to myself, as we're going to go on board. Actually, perfect transitioning opportunity there. We're going to go on board with John Cole. The camera angle doesn't even need to change. How good is that? John Cole losing some time, actually, though, in this first sector, or overall on that previous lap, rather. So let's see what he can do now, as he is pretty much leading the final few attempts here. It is Rob Whitney, actually, who we may go on board with now, as he is leading the field through this next stage in qualifying, this next qualifying phase, the next set of fast laps that the drivers are trying to make to try and improve themselves. And I was wondering when we were going to see him, Matt Daly, deploying the usual Matt Daly strategy of turning up at the very last moment and trying to see how much of a good lap you can post. I imagine just to add a bit of jeopardy to things. So let's see where he goes now in this qualifying session, as Rob Whitney does improve. Actually, no, we're still waiting to find out as he heads now into the second sector. I can tell you that it is in fact an improvement, so I'm just predicting the future for you there, ladies and gentlemen. A 56.6, his fastest first sector of this session so far. Meanwhile, Greg Young also improving. Fortunately for John Cole, he loses out. And as Rob Whitney had a bit of an issue there, I think that might have actually just been some lag on my end. I have tweaked the settings a bit. We've had some nice upgrades to the streaming slash viewing slash commentating PC. And that means that we have been able to crank the graphics up just that little bit higher. And it, I wish a set, of course, had some ray tracing that we could deploy, but we don't, unfortunately. But that may be meaning that the stream is struggling just a little bit. So we'll have a brief look at that. But we go and watch Rob Whitney now heading through the second sector. He loses out this time around. John Cole does in fact catch it, make an improvement through the second sector. Watch him now heading down through the start finish straight here. What will it be for John Cole? It will be a loss once again, unfortunately for him. We go on board now with Greg Young, who posts an absolutely fantastic lap. I was trying to join him just at the lap moment, and by 1,000th of a second, John Cole, or rather Greg Young, apologies, sees himself on the front row of the grid. That is a fantastic lap from Greg Young. What made the difference there? That was the start of the previous lap was just absolutely electric for him. He is now, of course, only 200th of a second away from Alan Matthews, so that will have Alan Matthews a little bit concerned at this stage in qualifying. Willie Gliss, I'm sure, will be utterly devastated to be losing out by that much of a small margin. That is really is an impressive run from Greg Young there as he heads now through the Shell Oils corner. We're going to see if we can go on board with Matt Daly. I don't believe we can at this stage because he's still ready to complete his first lap. So Matt Daly will only actually have one fast lap attempt in this qualifying session. It will be a one-shot quali for Matt Daly. Let's see where he can go with so little time with a low fuel run. We'll stay on board with John Cole just a moment. Actually, you can see we're on board with Greg Young, rather. You can see in the background Willing Gliss, who we're going to go on board with now. That's what my transition was, as he headed through turns 10, turn 11 and turn 12, and running down towards Druids now. He has posted a purple first sector. That first sector time really starting to tumble down now for these drivers. At 55.1 is the fastest of the session so far. We've found half a second within 15 minutes. That is fantastic effort from all the drivers. The progression really is enjoyable to watch as drivers get more and more confident. Unfortunately for Rosie Hodson, perhaps too confident heading into turn 5. She's had to back out of it, or rather hasn't had to, has been forced to, owing to a bit of a collision with a wall there. So she abandons this qualifying session, is currently on provisional pole for the AM runners. So let's see how she fares against her competition. Her competition still completing their laps, of course. And Willing Gliss posted an absolutely blistering first sector, losing it through sector 2 and sector 3, but still takes pole position in this race for race 1, rather, by about 1/10 of a second. That's a fantastic effort from Willing Gliss there. That will have Alan Matthews scratching his head somewhat, because Alan has held that for quite some time now. Willing Gliss out of nowhere, it must be said, no offence, Will. That really seemed to come together at the very end there. Rather, it didn't. It was all in the first sector. It made the difference there. Will Inglis sees himself on provisional pole now. Alan Matthews now in P2. Will Inglis does have some traffic in the form of Greg Young. Will he get out of his way? Although I imagine Greg Young is on a bit of a fast lap himself. He is, and I believe is actually backing out of it. I think a few drivers are now choosing to back out of it. This is all that they could do in the session. Can we go on board with Matt Daly? Unfortunately, we can't. We can go on board with Alan Matthews, who is watching Matt Daly come across the start-finish line. But let's see if we can catch Matt Daly crossing the line here. We'll go into a different camera perhaps. We can't, unfortunately, but I can tell you that Matt Daly hasn't actually posted a fast lap, so we'll be starting further down the order. No, he has. He's just posted his lap at 152.6, which sees him all the way down in. Where are we going for Matt Daly? That'll be... well, either way, it'll be at the back of the pro running for Matt Daly. So, a one-shot quali special for Matt Daly. This was not, however, for Will Inglis. One shot made the difference, and it was that previous lap there. A 141.59 sees Will Inglis now sat on pole for race 1. If that's anything to go by, then race 1 and race 2 are going to be absolutely fantastic in terms of action and just how close the field is as well. So don't go anywhere. We'll catch you in just a few minutes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You join us on the grid here at Oulton Park for race 1 of round 6. It is Will Inglis who sits on pole at the moment after a fantastic late qualifying charge. We have just under 30 seconds to go now until lights out, and I can tell you, as I mentioned, Will Inglis sat on pole after a fantastic late effort in qualifying. Alan Matthews P2, Greg Young P3, John Cole P4 in the end, Barry Clayton P5, James Atkins P6 and Matt Daly rounding out the field in P7. We now have 6 red lights on the gantry and we are away in a puff of smoke for all of the cars there as they try to scurry away down towards the Old Hall corner at turn 1. Excellent start for Will Inglis there. Likewise, Alan Matthews boxing off Greg Young there. Some dirt being kicked up by the likes of Will Inglis and Alan Matthews actually. So that's something that I have to watch out for in terms of getting too much pickup on the tyres. Contact between Greg Young and John Cole there. John Cole a bit too late on the brakes, maybe not expecting Greg Young to slow down as much as he did. No major ill effects, so which is good to see. Is that, I believe that is Matt Daly already up into P5. That's a fantastic start for Matt Daly, and it hasn't, I've just noticed in fact that we've managed to lose the timing system, so we'll get that mended for you as quickly as possible. As we see now that it is, in fact, I believe Barry Clayton has had a bit of an issue. Where is that? That was on the entry towards the Shell Oils corner. I'm not sure what was the cause of that. For whatever reason, though, he's dropped substantially far back now. He'll be on a bit of a recovery drive in this race, trying to make up as many positions as possible. So I wish him all the best on that one. It's not the easiest task to undertake, that is for sure, but if there's anyone that can do it, it would be the likes of Barry Clayton, who have excellent race pace, it must be said. We're still Will Inglis leading this race at the moment. Greg Young in Pre3 at the moment. The top 4 actually in the running within a second of each other. That is a fantastic effort from the drivers so far this race. We are, of course, though, only on the first lap. As we see Matt Daly just a little bit further off. He is, of course, this is effectively like it's practiced and quali all in one at this stage in the race for him, as Rosie Hodson finds her way past James Atkins. In fact, now P6 on the road for Rosie Hodson. I believe we did have some technical issues there, so I do apologise for how much you may have missed. It was a very exciting battle going on for the top 5 here. It is still Willingliss who leads by a bigger margin, not quite as big as it was at one point. I'll give you a very brief update of what's happened in this race, and I can tell you that Greg Young, after a bit of argy-bargy with the likes of John Cole, Alan Matthews, and potentially Matt Daly as well, has found himself into P2. Alan Matthews sat in P3 at the moment. John Cole has dropped from a peak of P2 now into P4, and Matt Daly still in P5 at the moment, but a little bit closer to the rest of the front-running action. Willingliss in control of this race at the moment. Meanwhile, Greg Young setting his fastest lap of the race so far, and in fact the fastest lap of the race so far. He is now within a second of Willingliss, so it's put on a bit of a charge, and I can tell you what made the difference, much as it did for Willingliss in the first session of this weekend, the qualifying, or the first televised session of this weekend, the qualifying session. It was Sector 1 at 55.4. That would be competitive actually with a qualifying lap, but he's done it with 17 minutes worth of fuel on board, so very impressive indeed. I do apologise for the technical issue there, but that is pretty much what has happened in this race. I'm sure if you look back at our previous touring car races, you will get the idea of things. Some fantastic battling, and I do apologise to the participants as well who might miss some of the favourite action in this race so far. We do still have plenty of racing action though to look forward to, so don't go anywhere, as we see Greg Young actually now catching up to Willingliss once he's been freed of those battles against the likes of John Cole, Alan Matthews. He has shown some impressive pace indeed. That 55.4 has turned into a 55.3, an even more impressive Sector 1 time for Greg Young now, as he is closing that gap towards Willingliss as much as possible. Willingliss, can he respond at this point in time? It doesn't seem to be the case, where Willingliss's previous lap, a 42.8 in comparison to Greg Young's 41.9. They are both their respective fastest laps so far, and as I mentioned, Greg Young actually taking the fastest lap of the session so far. We are 4 laps into this race now with 16 minutes to go on the timer, and it could go anyone's way. We still have the top 5 covered by about 5 seconds. We'll make that 6 in fact as we head now down towards the Deer Leap once again, and it is still very close indeed between some of these drivers. Greg Young now will start to experience the benefit potentially of a slight slipstream down that first start-finish straight. Of course, it's not too substantial in these Duletta TCRs and on this circuit as well, but every little helps. He will of course have a slight amount of dirty air, but once again not too major in these cars, but those are the small little details that make all the difference in this type of close racing. He's now only 0.2 of a second behind Willingliss as we head down towards turn 4 and turn 5 in just a moment. No one diving underground or into the air. No, that is good to see. Underbraking then, Greg Young putting pressure on the inside there, but well defended by Willingliss. He's not trying to compromise his corner at all, because he knows if he does make one small slip up, not only is it potentially falling foul of Greg Young, but potentially Alan Matthews as well. Meanwhile, Matt Daly has found his way past John Cole. Where is John Cole at the moment? He's a little bit further back, just exiting the Shell Oils corner, and with a smashed windscreen as well. I'm sure that might be telling a few tales in this race, but Greg Young now heading through turns 10, turn 11 and turn 12, that corner complex ending with Knickerbrook there. He is still in P2, but by about 0.3 of a second this time around, as we head now down towards Druids, and Greg Young is looking up the inside there, but Willingliss is going to defend there, not give him the room at all. He's wanting to make this as difficult as possible for Greg now, as we head into the right-hander of turn 15, bouncing over the curbs goes Greg Young, and is still very much putting the pressure on Willingliss as we get ready to start another lap. These two really spurring each other on now. They've broken away from that top 5 order that was so close together for so long. Of course, that has now spread out, of course, the commentator's curse in full effect once again. Once I mention something, it completely changes, completely turns on its head. As we head down the start-finish straight once again, they're posting a pretty much identical lap time this time around. So maybe Greg Young struggling with the tyres somewhat, struggling to get past Willingliss, of course. You need so much of an extra pace advantage to get the move actually completed in comparison to just catching up here. And Willingliss is putting on an almighty defence here. He is really fighting for these points, and of course he does need to, because he is, despite his fantastic pace so far this season, despite just how on the ball he's been in so many qualifying sessions and in so many races as well, the luck just really hasn't been with him so far this season. He's currently P8 in the championship with 52 points to his name. That will, of course, change in race 2. We will give you a championship update for race 2 as well, but here's how things stand at the moment. These two separated by about half a second, but separated by just a little bit more in the point standing. It is in fact, Matt Daly who leads the point standings at the moment with 226 points. He's in a fairly comfortable spot at the moment. He's got no major challenges from behind, and he's currently doing his best to catch up to Alan Matthews. I can tell you that in terms of current pace at the moment, they are pretty much identical, but Will Inglis is responding very much to Greg Young behind there, and has posted the purple Sector 1, a 55.1, which actually matches his elusive 55.1 in qualifying. That one that really made the difference in qualifying. He's matched that now with half a race's distance worth of fuel on board, so very impressive feat from Will Inglis there. But I can tell you, with 226 points, it is Matt Daly who leads the championship standings at the moment. Alan Matthews in P2 then with 157. Then we have John Cole in third with 127. Then we have Nathan Birch, not present this season, unfortunately, with 91 points. Then we have Greg Young currently in P2, battling out with Will Inglis for the lead of this race. But Will Inglis responding with a 141.4. A fantastic lap time from Will Inglis there, but it goes wide at turn 1. Will that compromise the exit down towards turn 3? I think it will. They're near enough side by side now. Greg Young's going to have to go the long way around, though, if he wants to make it stick. Well defended by Will Inglis, once again blocking that inside line there, and just sweeping gracefully to the other side of the circuit, so as to accidentally, I'm sure, not allow Greg Young past. As we head now down through turn 4 and turn 5 in just a moment. The back end's looking not entirely comfortable there, but no major drama for any driver in particular. As we head round turn 5 and down on the run towards the chicane, Alan Matthews showing as P1. No, that is just a bit of an error there, but the purple sectors are absolutely flying out now. Someone who has just posted a purple sector, actually, I'd like to mention, is Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton, we mentioned, you may not have seen actually, had some issues at the start of the race, and has now found himself in P8 at this stage in the race. He has been slowly but surely catching back up to the rest of the field and doing a very good job of it as well. His current pace at 142.8, certainly competitive. He should be clawing his way through the AM runners now. He's already got past Rob Whitney and is looking to get past James Atkins, his next rival in the pro running, so he'll be looking forward to a few more points on the board potentially. I just want to give brief mention to what's going on at the front end of the field, though, because all of a sudden now it's a three-way battle for the lead here, as Will Inglis leads by about a tenth. It's now dropped to about 3/10 because Greg Young goes a little bit wide into the dirt and now is very much under threat from Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews, if he plays his cards right, can soon find himself in the lead of this race. He's still within half a second of it. Make that 8/10 now as we head it down towards the start-finish straight once again. But Alan Matthews making a substantial amount of time actually on that previous lap at 142.3 compared to the nearest competition who were in the 143s. Both going wide through turn 1 there. Greg Young looking once again ready and poised to get the overtake done into turn 3, but well defended once again by Will Inglis, as we see Alan Matthews going a little bit wide through turn 3, bouncing over the curbs, bouncing into the grass, enjoying some rallycross there. He's able to rejoin the tarmac, but it's a little bit further back this time around. We've got just over 10 minutes to go in this race already. Would you believe it, folks? That's how quickly time has gone. A lock-up for Will Inglis there heading into turn 5, and he's still very much under threat from the likes of Greg Young and Alan Matthews. These three really sparing each other on that. A lock-up for Will Inglis trying to head into turn 7. I think he missed the corner pretty much, bouncing over the curbs really. Well, I don't think that was his own fault. I think his car is prone to the odd lock up here and there, and that is a manifestation of it as we head now into turn 10. And Greg Young looks far more concerned about, I would say, Alan Matthews at this stage in the race. Far more focused on putting a defence on and keeping Alan Matthews in P3 for the time being, as we head down towards the turn 15 in just a moment here. We see Barry Clayton has jumped ahead of, no, we're all still okay there. John Cole in P5 at the moment. It's not been as electric as a race as I expected from him. He very much was getting his elbows out, but unfortunately for him is currently sat in P5 at the moment. We will actually monitor at some point how Rob Whitney is doing, because he is very important at this stage in the weekend, because you might not think too much is going on for him in this race, although he is currently enjoying a battle with James Atkins. Much like Will Inglis is enjoying a battle, or probably not enjoying, is experiencing a battle with the likes of Greg Young and Alan Matthews as he fights his way, or fights to keep the lead of this race. Rob Whitney is battling against James Atkins lower down the order with the super soft tyres on. This is why Rob Whitney is important in this running. If his pace stays consistent, we may see a few more drivers opting to go onto that opting to go onto that super soft tyre, and I apologise for the couple of audio issues we were just experiencing here, as we hope to have them resolved now. But Rob Whitney is certainly keeping James Atkins at bay for the time being, so let's see how those super soft tyres do run for the rest of this race. His current pace is a 1:46.3. That was his last lap, compared to James Atkins' 1:45. So he is the slowest runner at the moment, is Rob Whitney. So those super soft tyres maybe struggling now in the final 10 minutes of this race. As we see actually at the front end of the field, as James Atkins was looking for a way up the inside there, got a little bit wrong though and does drop back, so I imagine we'll be putting on a charge later on. Meanwhile, Greg Young looking very much under pressure from Alan Matthews there, as they are now side by side, having exited turn 12 here. It does seem to be that Greg Young creeping out ever so slightly. If we compare their top speed, they are in fact identical, and that's absolute disaster for Alan Matthews there. I believe there may have been some contact between him and Greg Young. There wasn't actually, no. I think that was just a tyre tagging the inside of the circuit there that span him round and put him into a barrier at high speed. He drops back down to P5, make that P6 in just a few moments if he can't get rejoined quick enough and in a safe manner. But that is an utter disaster for Alan Matthews. That now promotes Matt Daly to the podium. Matt Daly running in P3 all of a sudden. He is only a second or so away from Greg Young. Greg Young now about 10 seconds behind Will Inglis. I'm not sure what's gone on there. A 1:52 on that previous lap. He may have actually been involved in that incident with Alan Matthews. This now means that Will Inglis' lead is looking oh so more comfortable on this lap. I'm sure he's rejoicing in that fact, because he's rather been under pressure for quite some time now, as Greg Young currently sat in P2, Matt Daly P3 and John Cole P4 at the moment. A small amount of separation between them, but I imagine the sweet allure of a podium will be spurring on the likes of John Cole to try and battle it out for a spot or for a chance at some silverware rather, as we now head into turn 5. A lock-up for John Cole there, which we can now see actually in our lovely new reflections that have recently been updated, and we see Barry Clayton in P6 at the moment. He's found a way past Rosie Hodson. Rosie Hodson, I wanted to give more mention to, actually has done a fantastic job of leading the AM running in this race so far. Has had no major competition, it must be said. Her nearest rival, Rob Whitney, is currently a few seconds down the road. In fact, made that 15 seconds down the road. He's now found his way past James Atkins on those super soft tyres, or rather has kept his position from James Atkins on those super soft tyres, and all of a sudden it's looking rather more comfortable for Will Inglis, but it's not looking comfortable for Alan Matthews. We've seen plenty of times before an Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton battle, and we've got another one coming up here now as we head down through turn 10, turn 11 and turn 12. And it will be Alan Matthews on the defence this time around from Barry Clayton, a charged Barry Clayton at that as well. He spent so long at the back end of the running here through possibly no fault of his own, and now finds himself in the midst of the midfield, firmly in with a shout of some solid points here. He's currently at P6 in the championship and could really do with as many points as he can get at this halfway stage in the championship. Can you believe it already? By the end of this race, in fact we already really have, or make that the end of this race, will have crossed the halfway stage in the championship, and what a fantastic championship it has been so far. But it does mean that the points are starting to, or each round is starting to matter more and more as time goes by. So all those point scoring opportunities matter more and more, and I believe we're seeing the likes of Barry Clayton really trying to capitalise on that. Winning this as well, this will do him really well in the championship actually. If he can gain 25 points from this weekend, this will see him leapfrog his way up the order, as John Cole has found a way past Matt Daly now, as I imagine a bit of a battle is going to ensue between these two in the final 9 minutes of this race, as there's contact between the two, potentially under braking. Lockups are central into that corner. It certainly was, as is now in the not too distant future Greg Young potentially involved in this battle as well. But Matt Daly wants his spot on the podium back, as Matt Daly takes that spot on the podium back, but I imagine he will give it back, and he does so indeed. Under braking there, the car a little bit unsettled, and he has to go for a bit of an escape. He does give the position back to John Cole though, which is nice to see. If he really was charged and didn't care about much else, I'm sure he would take that opportunity and just carry on, but that is not the type of driving standards we have here at ARL, as Matt Daly now doing his best to find his way past John Cole in the final few minutes of this race. Our nearest rivals then are the likes of John Cole, Matt Daly, and then we have Alan Matthews, Barry Clayton as well. As I mentioned just before, we have time and time again seen an exciting battle between Alan Matthews and Barry Clayton. There's 4 tenths between them at the moment. I'm sure that gap will only shrink as we head down towards turn 16 and get ready to start another lap in this race. Who will get that better exit? The exit really does matter. It sets you up for turn 1, really setting up for turn 3 as well. It is such a flowing circuit, is Oulton Park. It really does matter. It really does make the difference if you can carry as much momentum as possible, which is no easy feat in a front-wheel drive touring car. But then, in terms of a championship update, it is Nathan Birch in P4, 91 points. Then we have Greg Young, currently P2 in this race. He's P5 in the standings, 73 points, so a good weekend for him on the cards here. And then we have Barry Clayton, as we've just mentioned, P6 in the championship, running currently P6 in the race, which is good to see. A nice bit of circularity there. Then we have Andrew Brammer, P7, not with us this evening, unfortunately. Will Inglis, currently in P8 on 52 points. Then we have James Atkins in P9 on 50 points. Then we have George Brook Batterby, 43 points, P10. John Baker, P11, 14. And then Andrew Whitehead, classified P12 with 2. Then leading the AM running at the moment, not here this evening, unfortunately, we have Jack Hodson on 93 points. Then we have his sibling, Rosie Hodson, who's currently leading the AM running. This will be a fantastic weekend for her if this first race is anything to go by, because she could claw back that lead away from Jack Hodson. And much like we had at the first half of this year's running, we could have a sibling rivalry for the AM Championship, as we see Paul Millman, who is currently on holiday in Spain. Hope you're enjoying your holiday, Paul, and you will be joining us, I believe, for Singapore in just a week's time, which will be good to have you back. And then we have Steve Knight, currently P4 on 97 points, Rob Whitney, P5 on 70 points, and then Guy Swarbrick, P6 on 45 points. So that rounds out the championship order at the moment. I'm not sure the likes of Alan Matthews or Barry Clayton are too concerned with how the standings look. All they know is they want to take away as many points as possible from this first race. I will tell you one thing though, and that is Rob Whitney, who we mentioned we'd have a look at some stage later on in the race. We're going to have a look at him now at this stage later on in the race. He's running those super soft tyres, and those super soft tyres certainly seem to be working for him, that is for sure. He is currently in his fastest stage of the race so far. His previous lap at 145.7, make that a 145 flat as he crosses the line there to post his fastest lap of the race so far. So super soft tyres responding well to, I imagine, a bit of careful nurturing throughout the race, and also a lower fuel load and some impressive racecraft from Rob Whitney there. So we may see a few more drivers opting for that super soft tyre for race 2, the reverse grid race, coming up in just a few moments' time. That'll be very interesting to see how the strategy changes between race 1 and race 2. We're on board then with Rob Whitney at the moment, as a few more drivers starting their next lap, or rather completing the first sector. We have no personal bests so far at the moment, as we settle into a bit of a dip at the moment as the drivers start to settle into what is now the final few laps of this race. It is still, we haven't looked at him in a little while actually, Will Inglis, who leads this race by about 11 seconds. He has done an absolutely fantastic job. Really had to work for it at the start of the race, but has just nailed it. Perfect racecraft from him. A 141.4, his fastest lap. That pace has dipped away from him a little bit, but that doesn't matter because he's still got the pace to lead, and lead quite comfortably at that as well. But that 141.4 would be very competitive in qualifying. In fact, it would be the fastest lap in qualifying. So he has done a very impressive job indeed. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney's still posting personal best sectors as he goes personal best through sector 1. Let's see if he can break into the 144s. Likewise, James Atkins as well, also posting personal best sectors at this stage in the race. So maybe they've stored the tyre life for a little bit later and are putting on a bit of a charge. We are now on 0 seconds on the timer, and we are on the penultimate lap at the moment. We're on board with Will Inglis as he heads round through turn 12 at the moment, with very little in the means of a challenge, though someone who is very much under challenge is Alan Matthews. They're heading through the Shell Oils corner at the moment, and there is only 0.4 of a second separating these two drivers heading now through the part of the, well, it should be called, it is called Sector 2, but I'm going to call it the chicanes bit, because there's lots and lots of chicanes to catch drivers out, and also provide some overtaking opportunities, as we see these two not able to capitalise on that just yet. The gap building up between them as we head towards the end of the lap. Speaking of end of the lap, Will Inglis has ended the penultimate lap, and will stay on board with Will, I think, to enjoy a bit of a parade lap to end race 1. And he posts a 1:42.7 on that previous lap, and we're watching him now, I'm sure, just cruise his Giulietta TCR in to what will be a well-deserved top of the podium finish for Will Inglis. This will work wonders actually for his championship charge, which certainly isn't dead yet. Matt Daly is looking fairly untouchable, it must be said. Has really put on, but it was early in the season, I think Matt Daly absolutely nailed it and built up such a comfortable advantage. We are, however, only at the halfway stage, so don't count anything out yet, as we see Will Inglis heading around that Shell Oils corner, that banked corner, which provides overtaking opportunities, but also provides opportunities for things to go wrong. Less so in these front-wheel drive cars, more so in the likes of the Giulia GTA-M and the old GTA 1750 was really a bit of a handful on some circuits, as some drivers will attest to. These Giulietta TCRs are a little bit more forgiving at that style of corner. And Will Inglis is certainly thankful for that now as we head through turn 10, turn 11 and turn 12 for the final time in race 1. Race 2, of course, the reverse grid race coming up in just a few moments, where Will Inglis, if he wants another race win, will have to work for it this time around, because he will be at the back of the pro running and have to carve his way through the order. This will allow the likes of James Atkins and Barry Clayton a chance to show us what they are made of and start at the very top end of the field. I really hope the likes of Barry Clayton and James Atkins can get some decent points on the board, because they certainly deserve it. They certainly have the pace. It's just a case of some race weekends just not going their way, and that is sometimes racing. But it's certainly gone the way of Will Inglis in race 1 as he heads down towards the checkered flag. He takes the race 1 victory. Congratulations, Will Inglis, for a fantastic drive in race 1 here, as we now wait for Greg Young to head now through turn 16, turn 17, flashing the headlights as he comes home to take the second spot on the podium. Greg Young P2 there, and John Cole rounding out the podium. He certainly had to work for it at the start of the race, but he has been rewarded with a spot on that podium there. Matt Daly comes home P4 after an impressive, very impressive indeed, given his late qualifying charge. And then we have Alan Matthews very much working for it, but will be coming home P5 as long as turn 17 doesn't go wrong. I don't think it will, but Alan Matthews will be coming home P5, and kudos to Barry Clayton there. After a dismal start to the race, he comes home P6 to round out the pro runners in the top 6 here, as we see Rosie Hodson, after a fantastic drive, no major challenges for her. She nailed qualifying, has nailed race 1 as well. Rosie Hodson takes the AM race victory here at Oulton Park for round 6, and then we have Rob Whitney coming across line to take P2 in the AM running, and then James Atkins rounding out the field in P9. What a fantastic race 1. Race 2, the reverse grid race, coming up in just a few moments' time. Before we do that, though, it's worth checking to see if we have any victory donuts from anyone. I don't think we will, because they will all be happening in race 2, of course. So in that case, then, don't go anywhere. Join us in just a few minutes for race 2, the reverse grid race here at Oulton Park. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I can confirm we're now on the correct seed in OBS, so you should be able to see and hear what is going on now. We are waiting just for the start of the race. It is James Atkins on pole, Barry Clayton P2, Alan Matthews P3. We do have 6 red lights on the gantry, and we are away. A good getaway for James Atkins here. He heads down into turn 1 in lead at the moment. Barry Clayton clawing it back. Alan Matthews also looking for an opportunity here. Does he make contact? No, he just about avoids, but John Cole and Matt Daly do make contact, in fact banging wheels together, but no major ill effects from that. John Cole's had a fantastic start to this race. He's found his way up into P3 already, which is where he finished race 1, so that is, I'm sure, nothing to complain about from his perspective as we now head down towards turn 4 in just a moment. Side by side now, John Cole and Alan Matthews. John Cole is on an absolute roll here at the start of this race. He's going to have to concede the position for now. He does have the inside for turn 5. Let's see how he negotiates that. Is he going to get a good enough exit? He does. He's now edging out ahead of Alan Matthews, still in P2 for the time being, but he's going to get squeezed just a little bit by Alan Matthews. No, he's not. He's going to go late on the brakes heading into turn 7. And that is P2, potentially P1 for John Cole here, because James Atkins has got it a little bit wrong on the exit of turn 9. Finds himself on the outside of the circuit, drops down to P4. What a shame for him. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, in the lead of this race all of a sudden, clawing it back from John Cole, Matt Daly up into P3. This is absolutely chaotic here as Greg Young finds himself in a tyre barrier, now down into P9. He's going to have to work hard for this one as he tries to claw back a few positions. What a shame given how race 1 went for him as well. We know he has the pace. He's currently about 4 seconds off the rest of the field, so let's see what he can do to try and score a few points in this race. But John Cole currently 4 tenths away from the lead, who is Alan Matthews. Alan Matthews doing a fantastic job. Barry Clayton up into P4. He's had a dream start in comparison to race 1. James Atkins, meanwhile, in P5. Not a dream start for him. He drops down to P6 at the moment. Will Inglis currently in P5. Not quite an electric start as we saw from the likes of Matt Daly or John Cole. Our race 1 leader currently in P5 at the moment. As we see, the top 3 currently separated by just 1 second. It is Matt Daly currently putting the pressure on John Cole. John Cole, after carrying quite a lot of momentum through that first lap, is potentially more worried about what is going on in the rear view mirror, and that is Matt Daly, and that is something certainly to be worried about. Our current championship leader, whose lead has slightly shrunk after race 1. We will of course have a brief look at that at some stage in the race, because we do of course update throughout the weekend. But Matt Daly dropping back now actually from John Cole a little bit. The gap's now evening out ever so slightly. The gap, I'm sure, doesn't feel quite even between Barry Clayton and Will Inglis, potentially James Atkins as well, as we head through turn 7, turn 8 and turn 9. The Britain's complex here, only 2 tenths of a second separating the 2 cars on entry. That gap builds up ever so slightly. Now Barry Clayton gets a good getaway out of turn 9, heading down up the hilltop towards turn 10, where you have another chicane to negotiate. That 2-litre turbocharged engine powering these cars up the incline with ease now, as the gap's building out ever so slightly within the midfield, but still quite a close gap between the top 3 here, as there's a lock-up. I believe that was for Alan Matthews actually heading into turn 15. The back end looking a little bit squirmy, although not quite as bad as we've seen at the likes of Brands. I think back to Andrew Whitehead and Matt Daly through Brands. Paul Millman as well seems to ring a bell, where the cars were basically just Formula Drift cars. They were an absolute hoot to watch, but the cars looking much more controlled and compliant here at Oulton Park. It seems to really suit the cars, does this circuit, as Alan Matthews goes a little bit wide through turn 1 there. He loses out a bit of speed as a result, and that allows John Cole to catch right back up, now within 3 tenths of a second as we head into turn 3. Meanwhile, throughout the rest of the field, places being traded everywhere. Will Inglis goes for P4, but overcooks it potentially into turn 3, goes into the gravel, loses a substantial amount of momentum, and is now down into P7. Greg Young gets ahead. He's now going to be under pressure from Rosie Hodson. Rosie Hodson, our race 1 AM leader, has found herself at the back end of the AM running at the moment. Rob Whitney, meanwhile, in P6. Rosie Hodson, however, goes wide. I'm not sure what went on there, but that is a substantial incident for her as she goes into the gravel, into a tyre wall as well. What a disaster for her in this race. Right after the highs of race 1, race 2 will be a race to forget for Rosie Oulton, and her best opportunity potentially of throughout the entire season to catch up to her sibling, currently leading the AM running, has pretty much been thwarted. What a shame for Rosie in this race. Meanwhile, though, still plenty to talk about elsewhere in the field. John Cole, only 0.2 of a second away from Alan Matthews. As we head down towards turn 15, once again John Cole setting purple in the first sector at 55.5, not quite as low as we saw in race 1 so far, but we still have 20 minutes to go and we still have most of a tank of fuel on board the cars, so we'll wait to see that time start to tumble down later on. Meanwhile, I just want to give mention to, speaking of times tumbling, we did have the threat of a bit of a strategy change for some drivers because we watched Rob Whitney put an impressive stint in on those super soft tyres. I can tell you, no one else has opted for the super soft tyres other than Rob Whitney. We saw he had impressive pace towards the end on them as well, so maybe from this position, P6 on the road at the moment, this will be a bit of a turn in fortunes for him. If he can make those super soft tyres work from the midfield in particular, it could be a good race for Rob Whitney, making up for race 1 for him, as we see John Cole currently 0.4 of a second behind Alan Matthews at this stage, so the gap ever looking like a chasm in comparison to where it has at some point in this race so far. Will Inglis finds his way past Rob Whitney now, and now we have Rob Whitney, Rosie Hosden, the nearest competitor, well, the AM runners, about 8 seconds apart at the moment and next to each other on the road in terms of track position. About 9 seconds separating these two at the moment, so Rosie may choose to play her cards right, may choose to use her higher tyre life later on in the race, try and push later on and close that gap towards Rob Whitney and take back the AM race lead. Meanwhile, Greg Young still a little bit of ways off the field, not sure what's going on in his race, but it's not good. I'm sure he probably, if we did do post-race driver interviews, which is something I'm still trying to have a look into how I can make work well, if the drivers are up for that, we may have at some point potentially for 2023. That would be very interesting indeed. But John Cole currently 0.3 down on Alan Matthews. A bit of a lock-up for him through turn 15 there, but that didn't really phase him at all. It has phased potentially Matt Daly. Matt Daly is currently in P3 on the road and has dropped back a little bit owing to going into the grass there. That can be, sometimes you'll see a car ahead make a bit of an error potentially, or slam on the brakes a bit too much, and you kind of have a bit of an overreaction, and it kind of unsettles you a little bit. I can attest to that, owing to last night I was enjoying some endurance testing at a go-karting circuit, and unfortunately such an event happened, and I soon found myself approaching a tyre wall with quite a bump, and it really did, let's say, it was back-breaking pretty much. I am now not ready for any type of physical activity, to be honest. But James Atkins, meanwhile, in P6 at the moment, he dropped back down a couple of positions as Barry Clayton finds his way into P5. Winning this P4 at the moment, James Atkins, I thought, was having a bit of a drift on heading through turn 3, but that didn't seem to be the case. Meanwhile, the front three have absolutely broken away from the rest of the field once again in an absolute class of their own, it must be said, as we head through the Shell Oils corner. It is Matt Daly who posts the purple Sector 1 this time at 55.3. It really is quite a good indicator of how green the track is getting and how confident the drivers are getting. That Sector 1 with being such a huge sector as well, it really does make show just how confident the drivers are getting, as we see that Sector 1 threaten the 54s. It hasn't happened yet. It may happen here in race 2. I certainly hope it does. Will be very impressive indeed. As we see John Cole and Alan Matthews separated by about 0.2 of a second as we head down towards turn 15. Once again, Druids, another very impressive corner here, because it seems to be so easy to lock up here, but I've never seen a driver actually go wide and find themselves off the circuit, as Alan Matthews is very much on the defence here. His car in the middle of the circuit, heading through Lodge now, wants to get on that loud pedal as quick as possible on the run up to the checkered or the start-finish straight. Once again, he does have John Cole for company this time around, who's near enough side by side now heading into turn 1. John Cole does have the outside though, which is a bit of a disadvantage. Perfectly executed by Alan Matthews. The driver's running on to that weird concrete gritty stuff, which there is a technical term, but for now I'm going to call it concrete gritty stuff, which seems to be a bit of a favourite for some of the drivers here. Running wide onto that and doesn't get you caught out by the stewards, but seems to give a bit of a gain in terms of pace. Meanwhile, John Cole in P2 at the moment, sector 2 at 33.1 sees him go purple through that middle sector. He is absolutely giving it his all, really, to try and find his way past Alan Matthews now, heading through the right-hander, that banked right-hander of Shell Oils corner. He's still within half a second of Alan Matthews, and this doesn't look like it's going to show any signs of slowing down yet. bouncing through the chicane of Britons there. They are still oh so close at the top end of the field. And we're going to stay on board with them as we have a brief update on the championship standings at the moment. It is still Matt Daly, of course, who leads 238 points this time. His lead shrinking slightly compared to Alan Matthews, 167 points now in P2. Then we have John Cole, 142 points in P3. Greg Young matching now Nathan Birch. Greg Young now P4, 91 points. Nathan Birch, P5, 91 points, both in the 9 through 9 Corsa team. So there's potentially some team orders going on there later on in the season. Winning list P6, 77 points. Barry Clayton, P7, 72 points. Catching up to winning list is Barry Clayton. Winning list, though, doing a very good job indeed of getting higher up the order. He was quite far down just a couple of rounds ago. Likewise in the Formula Alpha, actually, but has really put on a bit of a mid-season charge. I'm sure he'll be in with a shout of it later on in the running, so don't go anywhere later on this year. Then we have Andrew Rambo P8 still, and then we have James Atkins P9, 56 points, and then the rest of the order doesn't change. In terms of the AM running, the order doesn't change either. It is Jack Oulton still leading, 193. Rosie Hodson, P2, 164. Certainly closed up, but not closed up as much as she would have wanted. She'll certainly be trying to find a way past Rob Whitney at some point in this race. Rob Whitney currently P5 on 88 points, catching up to Steve Knight. So no major changes in this weekend so far. We are only halfway into the championship, though, so anything could change. Meanwhile, Rob Whitney, James Atkins having a bit of a battle, and unfortunately for James Atkins, it's disaster once again on the gravel this time around, and it is P8 on the road for James Atkins after starting this race 2, the reverse grid race, as I've just become accustomed to calling it now, after starting on pole, finds himself in P8 on the road. What a disaster for him. Rosie Hodson, meanwhile, is certainly gaining on Rob Whitney, now only 4 seconds separating P1 and P2, which is first and last in the hour running for this race. There's going to be quite an exciting battle forming up later on. I am sure we are nowhere near, well, not nowhere near, we're not even at half race distance yet, and there's certainly plenty to talk about here in race 2. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, breaking away slightly now from John Cole and Matt Daly, much more focused on their own battle, I think, at this stage in the race, as John Cole just slammed on the brakes. Either that or the headlights have just gone on. I'm sure Mito and Giulietta drivers are quite aware of the behaviour of the auto headlight system being, at least in my case, slightly peculiar. I have cleaned my windscreen, but it may just be me, but my auto headlights can have a bit of a mind of their own sometimes, and that might be what is currently being experienced in John Cole's car. He says, as the tomatoes may be now being thrown at me for giving my review on my experience with the Mito, which I do adore. Although with my bad back at the moment, the Sarbelt seats are feeling like a bit of a mistake at this point in time. Although I'm sure the racing seats in these cars are certainly being much appreciated, as these drivers are going an absolutely full pelt as we see them at the midway stage of this race. In terms of current pace at the moment, we are being led by Winning List. Actually, Winning List currently P4 on the road. Our race 1 winner is currently posting 141s, high 141s. His best lap 141.7, previous lap 141.8, and of course we're on board with Barry Clayton, not Winning List. So hello Barry, hope you've enjoyed getting that number 1 plate delivered car a bit more airtime. But there is Will English. Actually, we are going to go back aboard with Barry Clayton, because I wasn't quite sure if he was going to make that corner. He did just about, but there was a bit of a lock up there. He did, however, make the corner with ease in the end. John Cole within a second of Alan Matthews now. Winning List then really turning up the pace now at 55.1. Once again, we found the 55.1 barrier. Let's see if he can chip away at that and maybe get into the low or into the 55 flats, or the 40 or the 54s rather, if I can get my words out properly. Winning List absolutely flying along now. He's in a bit of a race of his own at the moment. This could put him in very good stead indeed. He is about 8 seconds behind the podium runners, who have been in a race of their own themselves and have enjoyed lapping comfortably a few seconds ahead of the rest of the field. However, Winning List has broken away from the likes of Barry Clayton and can now set his sights on trying to catch up to those front three, who will be battling it out with each other. And of course, battling it out does slow you down. A 141.5, fantastic lap from Winning List on that lap. A personal best and purple Sector 1 and a purple Sector 3 as well. 12.8, such a short Sector 3 at this circuit. Meanwhile, James Atkins having some further issues, I believe. Currently P9 on the road. Has had a bit of an off. Those tyres, I'm sure, not very happy. Neither is the aerodynamic devices on his car. His rear wing, I can tell you, is, by the looks of things, pretty much non-existent at this point. It will, of course, still appear on our models, but I can tell you, in terms of how the car will feel to drive for him, it will be just a little bit more oversteering. Which is slightly scary at a high-speed circuit like Oulton Park, or high/medium, probably high-speed we'd go for a British circuit is Oulton Park. Certainly pretty much anything is high-speed in these Giulietta WTCR cars. Fantastic car, fantastic mod as well. What a shame we don't see it in the real world of touring car racing anymore. But we see John Cole is currently within a second of Alan Matthews, but that is not what he is focused on at the moment. He is focused on Matt Daly being only half a second behind as we now approach now enter the final 10 minutes of this race. And it is Greg Young currently who is battling it out with Rosie Hodson potentially. Greg Young, another one who's had a bit of a disaster to start this race after such an impressive race one as well. This will also affect him later on in this championship, because Will Inglis will be scoring more points than Greg Young, as will Barry Clayton. Both those drivers taking home more points this weekend, closing up the gap to Greg Young, who is P4 in the championship at the moment. The front three, though, all posting high 42s on that previous lap, so they are looking very competitive with each other indeed, I'm sure, as the fuel loads get lighter once again and we enter the final stages of this race and this race weekend. Things will start to hot up as they start to make that final push. The stakes become ever so higher as each corner, each lap is ever so more important, because they have just fewer and fewer opportunities to get those points on the board. And now we see John Cole within a second of Alan Matthews. He's actually broken away from Matt Daly just a little bit. Where is Matt Daly in terms of pace at the moment? He's in the high 42s alongside everyone else. Very impressive indeed when you consider the fact that he had no practice or qualifying run time at all. Meanwhile, Greg Young now finding his way past Rosie Hodson. Rosie Hodson currently P2 in the AM running, but a fair ways away from Rob Whitney. Those super soft tyres really working for him at this stage. It was only about 5 minutes from the end that we saw Rob Whitney break into the high 44s, low 45s. That has now happened for Rob Whitney, actually, so he could be on for quite a decent charge here. The super soft certainly working for him so far. He has no complaints, obviously leading the AM running as things stand at the moment. Let's hope for his sake that things stay that way, and for Rosie's sake that they don't. So we have a very exciting battle indeed as we enter the later stages of this race. Barry Clayton and Rob Whitney both posting personal best Sector 1s as the fuel load begins to get lighter now. Only 7/10 of a second between Matt Daly and John Cole. Meanwhile, at the front end of the field, as that gap, it's a bit like an accordion. There's a bit of a concertina effect occurring as if you're playing your David Croft bingo, there is one to tick off. In just a moment, we'll be talking about the Sky Glass. Oh, we've already done that. There's another one to tick off. And then we have the Martin Brundle commentary bingo card, which I hope you have on hand. We'll talk about a fresh set of boots, and something will happen for good measure. And then I will tell you that if you're new to the world of Alfa Romeo or AROC Racing League's action, John Cole just got a bit of a tank slapper on and was doing a very good job of catching it. So that was a move for good measure. So another one for the bingo cards. As we see Barry Clayton currently in P5 at the moment, he also in a bit of a race of his own. We haven't seen too much from Barry at all, as he has a small lockup heading into turn 5. Touring cars always looking very energetic on some corner entries. That very vibrant livery there, really suiting the Giulietta, I believe. But we'll get around to livery chat once again. And as I've already said this weekend, I've already said countless times on so many weekends, it's got to go to John Cole. I'm sorry, just that livery is absolutely fantastic. Matt Daly doing his best to show off his livery as well, as he tries to draw my attention by going off-road. That was all that was for, and it certainly worked, so thank you, Matt. With that very yellow Giulietta TCR there. Alan Matthews there with the Auto Italia liveried Giulietta leading this race at the moment. Auto Italia very happy with him indeed. Will Inglis on Tainer Batteries liveried Giulietta. Very nice livery there as well. The nice gradient effect on it. Barry Clayton we've just mentioned. Rob Whitney with the nice Italian flag inspired again. Another actually no, it's Part World UK liveried car there. And then we have Greg Young with the Alfa Romeo logo on. Another very elegant livery indeed. And then we have Rosie Hodson with the... What livery is that? Never actually heard of. That is the David Thomas Motoring liveried car there, and then we have James Atkins with the DHL liveried car. So plenty of livery variety there. That concludes livery chat for this weekend. It's been a little while since we've completely delved into livery chat, but I thought why not visit that small facet of the racing action once again. Meanwhile, the top three now separated by about 4 seconds this time around. Matt Daly's starting to drop off in terms of pace, actually. He doesn't quite have an answer by the looks of things for the likes of John Cole, Alan Matthews. John Cole also not quite pushing as hard as I would have thought he'd be trying to at this stage. Maybe he just can't. There's only so much that those cars and those tyres and those drivers at this stage in the weekend as well, do not forget that, can give. But maybe John Cole hoping for some type of error up ahead. It's certainly happened before, but doesn't seem to be quite as late this weekend, because I would like to mention that I don't believe at any stage in this weekend's racing we've had any lapped traffic, which is very impressive indeed. Every single person has been on the lead lap in this race, which is great to see. Goes to show we have a very competitive, very even, very fair field, which is one thing that we like to see, and I'm sure as you do as well. As the drivers have now settled into a bit of a rhythm, bit of a groove. They have occupied the piece of tarmac that they are comfortable occupying with no major challenges from in front or behind, and they will be ready potentially for things to hot up into the final stages of this race, or kind of cruise their way into a good point scoring finish, which of course every driver this evening will be coming home with some well-deserved points, which is very nice indeed. I quite like that. As we see John Cole still running with those headlights on. I've said it a few times before, but that alternator working just a little bit harder than everyone else's, John. Maybe if you turn the headlights off, that 1.3 second gap would become a 1.299 gap. No, it's going to become a 1.278 gap, actually, because he's been able to catch up a little bit heading through turn 3 here. And the gap it must be so frustrating for John Cole. He's got some excellent racecraft on display here. He doesn't want to push it too hard, because you might have the likes of that at turn 4, the back end stepping out, and could go very wrong for you indeed. A lock up into turn 5 here, but he wants to come away with some points. But he also really wants to fight for that lead of the race. The lead of the race, tantalisingly close for John Cole here. Greg Young, meanwhile, finds his way up into P6, P7, P8, occupied by the Amarons once again now. Greg Young, after a disaster start to him, hasn't been able to claw back what he would have wanted in terms of results, what he could have got in terms of his pace as well. He is behind Barry Clayton, another driver who had a couple of difficulties, but is doing a much better job not doing a much better job, but is in much better stead for race 2 this time around. That is one of the great things about the reverse grid race. It gives drivers another opportunity to make amends for what might have been a small mistake or an external factor in race 1. Race 2, the reverse grid race, does provide that. It is very good indeed to see the field mixed up, and of course the track ordering mixed up as well. Some drivers will be very pleased with the selection that they were given for this evening, some less so, but that's part of the fun of this mixed grid. I know Guy, our Alpha Driver magazine editor and of course organiser for everything ARL, would have very much liked to have been here at Oulton Park, but unfortunately couldn't make it. I hope you are watching and enjoying the 80% of the racing action that we've been able to catch, because of course small issue with the stream in race 1, which once again I do apologise for. You can tune in to the live timings at aroc.assettocourseservers.com/live-timing to have a look at what is going on in the field at the moment, and then also you can click event details, I believe, or races, to have a look at what went on at pretty much every stage of race 1. A fantastic little website which you may not know about if you are not actively participating or aren't too active on Facebook, but it is a fantastic little tool that we use in the commentary box as well to keep score on things, what is going on at all parts of the racing, so you can see as much as possible. Very handy indeed when you have so many things going on at once, so much competition. There can be multiple things going on track at once, so it is handy to see what is going on across the entire circuit. And I can tell you what is going on at the top end of the circuit is the front three have closed up once again. In fact, no, Matt Daly dropping off just a little bit now. In fact, Matt Daly, if he had a few more minutes in this race, might be under pressure from Will Inglis. In fact, could be under pressure from Will Inglis if things go wrong for him, as he goes a little bit wide there on the exit of, where is that? We're on the exit of turn 12. That has allowed Willis to catch up, is now pretty much within a second of P3 here, so Willis within a shout of another podium here. It will be a fantastic weekend for him if he can. But meanwhile, John Cole within a shout of the lead of this race, because he's caught back up to Alan Matthews. A substantial lockup though as he heads into turn 16, running down the start-finish straight once again, now within a second of Alan Matthews, and will be oh so frustrating for him. He's desperate to try and find a way past, but he's not close enough because of course he tries to make a move. He can't make a move stick from a second behind, but if he's about half a second or 0.6 of a second behind, he'd have to put on a pretty brave dive bomb, and he wouldn't want to be doing that at this stage in the race. But winning list now only a 10th behind Matt Daly. Matt Daly, I think, struggling with the car, struggling with the tyres for whatever reason. This isn't what we usually expect from Matt Daly, but of course he's had so little experience in the car this weekend. You can't really hold that against him, as we now see them side by side heading down towards turn 5. Turn 4 rather, apologies. And it is winning list who in fact takes P3 as we head into turn 5 now, and it is Matt Daly who concedes a position, so the pace is starting to be a bit of an issue for Matt Daly. I think he'll be comfortable in P4 at this stage, as we are about to hit 0 seconds on the timer. But what a shame for him in this race. Not gone his way. Certainly not a disaster. He's of course leading the championship by a decent margin, but P4 is not where he thinks, I'm sure, he could have came home with, as James Atkins, we see, allows the traffic a lap ahead to get past. Meanwhile, John Cole within a second of Alan Matthews, still as the timer has hit 0. We are, of course, on the penultimate lap now, the dying stages of the penultimate lap as well. So this will be a very exciting kind of victory parade lap, as I like to call it, for Alan Matthews, because he's got to do it, got to revel in the glory of it all, while trying to keep John Cole at bay. And we know last lap incidents are certainly not impossible. Meanwhile, we see Matt Daly still keeping winning list honest. So don't say that all is said and done for winning list and Matt Daly. We could certainly have another fight going on between them as they head down towards turn 17 now, and it is Matt Daly still in P4 at the moment. Alan Matthews, meanwhile, is still a second ahead of John Cole. John Cole is really putting in all of the effort. If we compare their current pace at the moment, it is 142.1 for Alan Matthews on the previous lap, 142.04 for John Cole, within a tenth of each other on that previous lap, so they are matching each other in terms of pace. Unfortunately for John Cole, not enough of a pace advantage to try and get the move done. Willing List, meanwhile, 143.5 on the previous lap, and Matt Daly 144.7. Pace really disappearing from Matt Daly's car. Speaking of pace disappearing, has it disappeared from Rob Whitney's car? He is in the mid 145s at the moment, and his best lap at 44.3. So those super soft tyres certainly working for Rob Whitney this evening, which is good to see. But Alan Matthews now is currently heading down towards turn 10, still leading this race after what has been an impressive drive throughout race 2. It looks to be that he could be coming away with it if all things go well for him at the very end of this lap. And it will be a well-deserved victory for him if he can. I believe we've had a bit of an issue somewhere in the field. It is for Barry Clayton. Barry Clayton has gone off. I believe he'll be able to rejoin with enough time to keep up a bit of speed to keep Greg Young at bay. But what a shame for him. He should be okay, actually, to carry on, which is good to see. But last lap issues certainly not impossible here, as we are being shown as both drivers going wide there. Alan Matthews, John Cole going onto the grass. That could have been disaster for some of them if things were to go wrong, but that wasn't to be the case in the end, as Alan Matthews now heads onto the start-finish straight for the final time this weekend. It has been a well-fought victory, but it will be P1 for Alan Matthews in race 2, and John Cole, commiserations to John, comes home with P2 in the end after a hard-earned P2, it must be said, and Willingless rounds out the podium. P3 for Willingless, well-deserved with his pace. Unfortunately for Matt Daly, the pace was not there at the end, and he comes home P4. Still some good points on the board for him. Barry Clayton then, after a disaster race 1, will in fact score pretty much the same number of points in race 2 as well. So a solid weekend all around for Barry Clayton in the end, as he heads up the hill towards Deer Leap and will be coming home with P5. James Atkins is classified P9. Greg Young, after a disaster race 2, unfortunately for him, will be coming home P6. Rob Whitney, after just a couple more corners using those super soft tyres, will be coming home with the AM race victory, a fair few seconds ahead of Rosie, his nearest rival as well. So congratulations, Rob, for the AM race victory here at round 6 at Oulton Park. And then we have Rosie Hodson rounding out the field there with P2 in the AM running. Rosie Hodson comes home P8 on the road as well. So a fantastic evening's racing there. I believe we're all diving into the pit now, but that now marks the halfway stage in the Touring Car Championship, and it certainly could go any way. It's certainly going to be very exciting the second half of this season's running. Join us in a fortnight's time for the next randomly selected race here in the Touring Car Championship, and join us in a week's time for the next single-seater round at Singapore. Certainly will be very exciting indeed. So don't go near. Thank you very much for watching this evening, and good night.